October 20th, 2025. Game 7 of the American League Championship Series between the Seattle Mariners and the Toronto Blue Jays. Winner goes to the World Series, loser goes home. For some perspective from both sides, the Blue Jays haven't been to the World Series since 1993. The Mariners, a team that's been around since 1977, has never appeared in the World Series at all. Seattle's drought is also the longest in Major League Baseball, as all 30 teams have won at least one pennant since the Mariners' first year in existence. In this sudden-death game, Seattle pounced on the Toronto pitching. A home run by Julio Rodriguez off Shane Bieber gave the Mariners a 2-1 lead in the top of the third. 2 innings later, Cal Raleigh connected for a solo shot to add to the small but vital lead. In between the scoring, the Mariners pitchers were phenomenal. Starting pitcher George Kirby pitched 4 innings, allowing 1 run in the process while striking out 3. Brian Wu came out of the bullpen to relieve him and was airtight at first, shutting down Toronto in the 5th and 6th. The score remained 3-1 in favor of Seattle, heading to the bottom of the 7th. In that inning, however, the Blue Jays rallied. A single, walk, and sacrifice bunt put the tying runs in scoring position with 1 out. Coming to the plate here was Toronto's best hitter all year, George Springer. In this pivotal moment, the Seattle manager decides to go to the bullpen. Makes sense. Wu is struggling here, and the Mariners have one of the best relief pitchers in Major League Baseball, Andres Munoz. Wait a minute. That's not Andres Munoz. That's Edward Bizardo. Why is Edward Bizardo coming in to pitch here? Seattle, what are you doing? This doesn't make any sense. Why isn't Andres Munoz on the mound? Surely this won't backfire, right?
Pitch. High fly ball. Left field. Arozarena watches it go.
Oh, Dan Wilson, welcome to Dumb Decisions. Before I break down what happened here, this whole series is about taking an in-depth look at decisions made during games that were clearly awful from the start. This isn't something that looked bad in hindsight. Rather, this is something that looked awful almost immediately. These are moves where your gut instinct tells you right away that there is no way this can possibly work. And sure enough, your gut instinct was smarter than that of an MLB manager. And for this one, we're looking at the insane pitching move made by the Seattle Mariners manager, Dan Wilson. Let's get right to it. Dan Wilson made the wrong pitching move, period. To look at the situation again, the Blue Jays have runners on 2nd and 3rd with 1 out. It's the bottom of the 7th inning in what is, and I cannot stress this enough, a sudden death Game 7. Brian Wu had been sharp so far for Seattle out of relief, but he's slipping here in the 7th. In what was probably the biggest, most critical moment in Seattle Mariners history, Wilson brought in Edward Bizardo from the bullpen rather than Andres Munoz. Don't get me wrong, Bizardo was great for the Mariners all year. During the regular season, he had a sharp 2.52 ERA and 150 adjusted ERA in nearly 80 innings pitched. In the postseason entering Game 7, he had allowed 4 earned runs in 11 innings for an ERA of 3.27. Despite those great numbers, Andres Munoz was even better. In over 62 innings pitched during the regular season, he had an ERA of 1.73 and adjusted ERA of 219 while saving 38 games as Seattle's closer. In the postseason, he had 7 1/3 hitless innings. Outside of 2 walks, he was perfect. Munoz wasn't just a better pitcher this year, he's consistently been one of the best in the league. Since 2022, Munoz has a 2.29 ERA and 165 adjusted ERA in over 235 innings. In the same time frame, Bizardo has a 3.25 ERA and 120 adjusted ERA across fewer than 140 innings. Munoz has nearly a full run lower in almost 100 additional innings. In fact, since 2022, there's been exactly 280 pitchers to throw at least 200 innings. Munoz's 2.29 ERA is the 4th lowest. I should also add that out of 287 pitchers this year to throw at least 60 innings, Munoz's 1.79 ERA was the 5th lowest. The 5th lowest this year and 4th lowest across the past 4 years. Dan Wilson legitimately had a top 5 pitcher in Major League Baseball at his disposal, but for some bizarre reason, didn't use him. Hold on a second, you might be saying. Sure, Munoz has been unbelievable, but maybe he was on short rest, while Bizzardo was well rested. That could justify this move. Now, you wouldn't believe this if I told you, but it's actually the complete opposite situation. Munoz's last appearance came 3 days prior on October 17th in Game 5 of this series, where he threw just 11 pitches. His previous appearance before that? Game 1 on October 12th. Andres Munoz threw, and I could not make this up if I wanted to, 11 pitches in a week-long span entering Game 7. For all intents and purposes, he was the most well-rested pitcher in the bullpen. It's plausible to think he could have threw the final 2 1/3 innings if needed. What about Bizzardo? This is the fun part. His last appearance came the day prior. On October 19th, he threw 2 innings out of relief. Not only that, but Bizzardo also threw in games 2 and 4 of this very series. I would like to repeat that last part because it sounds vaguely important. Edward Bizzardo pitched in twice the number of games in the American League Championship Series as Munoz did the moment he allowed the go-ahead home run. Can somebody explain why Bizzardo was on the mound here? Why did Dan Wilson overuse him and not use one of the best pitchers in baseball? Just to confirm as well, it's not as if Bizzardo had amazing stats against George Springer. Entering that at-bat, Bizzardo had faced Springer 4 times, where he was 1 for 4. In comparison, Munoz had faced Springer 3 times, where he was 0 for 3. 2 very small sample sizes, so at best, both pitchers were equally as good against him. It's not as if Bizzardo had held Springer in check many times over the years. I shouldn't even have to say this, right? Like, it's so blatantly obvious who to use in this situation. If Munoz had pitched the previous couple of games, had a large workload, or was hurt in any way, fine, I get that. Using a different pitcher is understandable in those scenarios. None of those apply. Munoz was well rested and not hurt. How do I know he wasn't injured? The fact that he appeared in this game after Bizzardo. Bizzardo pitched the 7th inning, and Munoz relieved him in the 8th. Unsurprisingly, he threw a scoreless frame there. He was assisted by some defense, but the point stands. Now, unlike other dumb decision videos I've made, Dan Wilson was asked about the pitching decisions he made. Here are some of the things he had to say.
Bizzardo's been the guy that's gotten us through those situations, those tight ones, especially in the pivot role, and that's where we were going at that point.
And why did you like Bizzardo better than Munoz in that situation?
Well, I mean, I think like we said, Bizzardo's been doing it all season long and has been so consistent at it. And, we felt really comfortable with him out there, the way he's been throwing the ball, especially in this series, and it was a good spot for him.
All right, so if I'm hearing correctly, Wilson decided to use Bizzardo there because he's been clutch for them all year in situations like these. You know what? I gotta give Dan Wilson credit for that. Case in point, during the regular season, Bizzardo had 72 plate appearances in high leverage situations. In such instances, he limited hitters to a low 450 OPS. As it turns out, it actually wasn't a bad idea to use Bizzardo here in the 7th. Is what I would say, if not for several inconsistencies and contradictions you ought to know. First off, when Dan Wilson said Bizzardo had been clutch for Seattle in situations like these all year, he left out something. Edward Bizzardo had more than twice the number of appearances in low leverage situations than high leverage ones. In fact, if we look at all the batters he faced during the regular season, Bizzardo had more low leverage situations than high and medium ones combined. It's also not as if he had a ton of games where the score was close. Bizarro faced a combined 158 batters when the score was either tied or within 1 run. When the difference in score was 4 or more runs, he had 313 plate appearances, nearly double the amount. That sentiment is also true here in the playoffs. In the 3 championship series games he appeared in, prior to Game 7, he was brought into the game while the Mariners were losing in 2 of them. He took the mound in Game 4 when they were down 5-2, and in Game 6 when they were down 5-0. In layman's terms, yes, Bizarro had his moments, but more often than not, he was used in mop-up roles. That all somehow must have slipped Dan Wilson's mind. But Walkoff, even in the few instances Bizarro was used in high-leverage moments, he was still excellent. True, but there's one more thing to mention. Edward Bizarro, again, limited batters to a 450 OPS in 72 high-leverage plate appearances during the regular season. Andres Munoz limited batters to a 455 OPS in 168 high-leverage plate appearances. Just as good in more than twice as many situations. Geez, it's almost like when you have one of the top closers in baseball who's used to tie games in late innings, it seems like a good idea to have him pitch in the biggest moment in your franchise's 50-year history. Who would have ever guessed, right? Seattle Mariners manager Dan Wilson brought the team as close to a World Series appearance as they've ever gotten. He was 8 outs away from a pennant, but thanks to his botched bullpen decision, the Mariners will go another year without an appearance in the Fall Classic. It's one of the dumbest managerial moves in Dan Wilson's career, and one of the dumbest moves in Seattle Mariners postseason history.